This is for my American supporters here on Patreon. This is only going to be on Patreon, and I just want to tell you that seeing the results of the Georgia special elections for the Senate in the United States, it is very obvious that the election has been successfully stolen for the two Democratic senatorial candidates, and therefore that the Democrats will have a majority in the Senate, a majority in the House of Representatives, and they will have the presidency. Irrespective of what happens tomorrow, January 6th, there's all this talk that there's going to be a big to-do in Washington, but as I'll explain in a second, none of that is really going to matter. The point is that come January 21st, 2021, the Democrats are going to have control of both chambers of the Congress and the presidency, and they will carry out their goals. And that means that for most normal people in America, well, quite frankly, and quite simply put, America is about to turn into a nightmare. And you should be aware of what's going to happen. See, the Democrats and the Republicans are basically, six of one, half a dozen of the other. That's not the real issue. The real issue is that, see, on the Democratic side, there is a fringe element that are basically communists. They call themselves progressive, they call themselves, hard left or something like that, or anti-fascist or something like that, but they're communists. Now, communists care about power. They don't care about helping the people. No, they care about controlling the people, controlling the state. And the hard left in the United States, the progressives, the communists, they have effective control of the Democratic Party. They have essentially a veto power against the leaders of the Democratic Party. The leaders of the Democratic Party cannot achieve anything without this progressive fringe supporting them. Ergo, the progressive fringe, these communists, they are the ones with the real power in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, since it controls both houses of Congress and the presidency, they can start implementing a whole host of measures which will be catastrophic for the United States as a society, as a nation, as a country. And it will be a nightmare for the vast majority of people who are living in the United States, presumably you who are watching this. Okay, so what are their goals? What are the goals of these commies? Well, very simple. First of all, what they want to do, and also which the Democratic leadership wants to do, is pack the Supreme Court with more Supreme Court justices so that the Supreme Court consistently sides on the left, on the Democratic side. And they're going to achieve it because, you see, in the American Constitution, there's no limit to the number of Supreme Court justices. It's not inscribed in any of the clauses or articles of the Constitution. It can be as many as the Congress wants, and they just need a simple majority. And a president, of course, willing to sign off on this. Back in the 1930s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president of the United States at the time, tried to pack the Supreme Court. And members of his own party resisted him. It was a big scandal at the time. It was called the court packing scandal. But back in the 1930s, there were members of the Democratic Party who saw the long-term damage that court packing would do. The current people who are in the Democratic Party, the current leaders of the Democratic Party, they don't either see the long-term damage or they don't care. I mean, really, they don't really care. All they care about is their short-term gain. Because in many ways, both parties, not just the Democrats, but both parties, see America as a sinking ship. And so they want to get as much as they can now and not worry about tomorrow. Because tomorrow, for them, it's not going to happen. It's not going to matter. America is sinking, so get what you can now. And that's why they're not going to oppose this court packing measure. And because of it, there will be no constraints on any of the policies that the Democratic Congress and the Democratic presidency imposes on the American people. Now, another measure that they're going to implement is, of course, packing the Senate, because their majority in the Senate is very slim. And so what they're going to do is they are going to push for statehood for Guam, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia. Now, each of these 3 territories would add, if they became states, 6 senators. And because of the demographic composition of those 3 territories, those 6 senators would likely be Democrat. And so because of it, there will be a permanent Democratic majority in the Senate. And this will mean that anything that the Democrats want will be passed. And more to the point, even if by some miracle there is a future Republican president, which is not clear at this time, and I'll explain in just a moment, even if by some miracle there is such a Republican president, his hands would be tied because of this permanent Democratic majority in the Senate, a product of these 3 territories becoming states. The other thing that Democrats want, and they have been very upfront about this, is that they want to persecute all those people who supported Trump. Now, irrespective of how many votes Trump actually got in the 2020 election and whether the election was stolen or not, that's not the issue of this video. The issue is, how many people voted for Trump roughly? 70 million? Those 70 million are the enemies of the Democrats. That's what they believe. And they are going to persecute them. They have said so. Now, how are they going to persecute them? Very simply. They are going to go after Second Amendment rights, and they are going to implement woke culture across the board. In your employment, in your school, your university, your elementary school, woke ideology, woke propaganda is going to be imposed, and everyone is going to have to kowtow to this ideology. And if you don't, then you're not going to get government money, you're not going to get government sponsorships for your business or whatnot. You will have basically a state-sponsored ideology, a state-sponsored religion, quite frankly. And what is the key tenet of this religion? That if you are a white person, you're evil. You are an evil, evil oppressor. It's a racist ideology that targets white people. And this is going to be the state-sponsored ideology that will be imposed in businesses, in schools, in churches, everywhere, including social media. This is what's coming. And there is going to be no safeguard against this communist takeover of the United States. And the weird thing is that these communists have, they were, I don't know if it's chance or just genius on their part, or a combination thereof. But see, they have realized that what they can do is they can outsource the tools of their totalitarianism to the tech monopolies, to the corporations. You see, it's not the state that's going to force you to bow down to the woke ideology. No, it's going to be the corporations. The corporations are going to demand that you go to these diversity training sessions. The corporations, so that you might keep your job, will insist that you go and say what an awful white person you are. How you have internalized misogyny, how you have internalized racism, how you are evil, how you have been an oppressor. The companies that you work for will insist on this because the government will be pressuring them. It's not the government that will directly be tyrannizing you. It will be through your employer. And insofar as the tech monopolies, Google and whatnot, wrongthink is going to go out the window. If you think that on YouTube there's been a lot of censorship before, you wait. Come March, April, May, the spring of 2021, you're going to see channels just disappear left and right. And the only thing that will remain on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, on all of these platforms will be the most milquetoast content, or that content that is politically approved, i.e. leftist content, extreme leftist content. And if you object, Antifa will take to the streets and bash your head in. Simple as that. See, if you object and you decide to get together with some friends and neighbors and demonstrate against this, Antifa is going to go and bust your head wide open, and the police are not going to stop them, because the police will have orders to stand down and let Antifa defend democracy. See? Antifa are the shock troops of this communist takeover. You have to understand, because this has happened before. This is not new. This playbook has been going on for decades, more than a century. It happened in Chile. I'm from Chile. And in Chile, we had this situation where the communist politicians would take over, and they would have these irregular paramilitary forces. In Chile, they were called the Movimiento Izquierdista Revolucionario, MIR, M-I-R. That's the translation is leftist revolutionary movement. And they were terrorists. And they assassinated people. They physically intimidated people. They would go to people's houses and scare the bejesus out of them. Scared them until they shut up. And of course, they intimidated the people who would try to stand up, who had some balls. Okay? They would go after them. After the people who said, no, this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. They'd target them. They'd target them, go to their houses, do the exact same thing that Antifa does. Antifa and the MIR, the Movimiento Izquierdista Revolucionario, they're the same thing. They are leftist paramilitary groups that get the tacit support of these leftist politicians. And how do they get the tacit support? Because these politicians, when they are in power, they order the police not to touch them, which is what has happened in Chile, or happened in Chile back in the day, and happened in every other country that has had this similar situation. The democratically elected leftist politician orders the police not to touch the leftist paramilitary force. And both the leftist politician and the leftist paramilitary force say, oh, we are not allied at all. We don't know each other at all. We've never talked. And that might even be technically true, but one hand is washing the other, see? The leftist politician protects the paramilitary, the leftist paramilitary group, from the police and from criminal prosecution. Meanwhile, the leftist paramilitary group uses violence as physical intimidation to silence the political opponent of the leftist politician. And you see how each hand washes the other? That's going to happen in the United States. We are seeing it now. And Trump isn't going to save you, okay? Trump isn't going to save you. And today, as I'm recording this, it's January 6th. There might be some issue. I mean, I don't know. Right now, it's the early morning in the United States as I'm recording this, but you know, none of the bullshit of Trumpism is going to change any fucking thing, okay? Trump is not going to be president come January 21st. It's going to be Joe Biden, okay? Joe Biden will be president, and he is a fucking puppet, okay? And I'll get to that in just a second, but Trump is not going to save you. No one is going to save you. Because the right-wing politicians, the conservative politicians, they do not have the balls to stand up to this. They might realize what's going on. They might have the brains and the wherewithal to realize that this is a communist takeover. It is a communist takeover of the United States. Don't be fooled. But even though they might realize it, they don't have the balls to stop it. They don't have the strength, the power to go and do it. And Trump isn't going to do it either because he lacks the balls. Because if he'd had balls, he would have done this ages ago. When Antifa first started, he would have crushed them. And he would have used the National Guard to crush them months ago. Did he? No, he did not. Because he didn't have the balls. Instead of fighting his enemies, he always tried to curry favor with them because he was a weakling. That's what he was. Don't pretend otherwise. Don't fool yourself into thinking that Trump is some savior. He's not. He's just a guy with a big mouth who said a lot of things that a lot of people agreed with, myself included. But he never did anything. He was always too chicken shit, too squeamish to do what had to be done. He is not going to save you. In fact, nobody's going to save you. Nobody, if you're living in the United States and you're like a right-wing guy, a conservative guy, you think that what's going on is insane, nobody's going to save you, okay? It's time to go. I mean, and if I seem a little out of sorts, if you say, oh, you know, CRP is panicking. Well, yeah, because I see what's coming. I've seen this shit before. Read fucking history. This shit is not novel. This has happened countless times before. And now is the moment. Now is the moment with this stolen election of these two senators. It's over. Understand it. Now, what's going to happen with Joe Biden? Well, very simple. Joe Biden is going to be shoved aside very quickly, okay? My personal bet is that by the 4th of July, he'll bow out on his own, okay? 4th of July, he'll want to be the president up until the 4th of July so that he can say that, you know, he was there, you know, the president up until the day of independence, you know, and shit like that. And July 5th, he resigns and he cedes ground to Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is basically an Obama puppet. Obama is pulling the strings of this operation, okay? Now, the Biden family, they are corrupt as all get out. They are incredibly corrupt. The whole Hunter Biden thing and all that shit, it's true, okay? I mean, fuck it. Twitter, the big tech companies, they all censored that shit about Hunter Biden's laptop, but it was all true. Hunter Biden and the Biden family generally are bought and paid for by foreign companies, by foreign countries, not even foreign companies, foreign countries, specifically the Chinese and the Ukrainians too, but you know, basically they're corrupt. And so there is enough corruption shit that could stick to Joe Biden. And on top of that, he is senile. And people are starting to admit that fact. They've always known it, but only now that they figure that the election really is in the bag, are they starting to admit it? Well, after January 20th, a lot more news articles are going to come out about Joe Biden's mental health, mental decline, his mental faculties. And so what's going to happen is that the Obama people and the Biden people will cut a deal. Biden steps aside gracefully, and they don't prosecute him. They don't prosecute him, and they don't prosecute anybody in his family. That's the deal that they're going to cut. Kamala Harris is going to be president, and Kamala Harris, as you know, is very obvious, she is, how can I put this? You see, I've been watching Kamala Harris for years now. I've been paying attention to her since 2013, when she got on my radar. Kamala Harris is a key figure. And let me explain. Kamala Harris became a figure in California politics by basically sleeping with San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown. She was his mistress. This is known fact. You don't believe me? Google it. And she climbed her way by sleeping her way to the top. She is a political animal. She is basically Hillary Clinton. She has never achieved anything on her own. She has the soul of a totalitarian. And I started paying attention to her back in 2013 because I was thinking of who would be president or who would be a likely Democratic candidate by the year 2020, 2024 for a project that I was working on the time, a dystopian novel that eventually fell by the wayside because reality became crazier than anything that I'd actually written up. But anyway, I paid attention to Kamala Harris and to Kirsten Gillibrand, who's a Dartmouth alum, as I am. Okay, and I had some insider information about her. And so that's for another video. But the point about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, or however you want to call her, she is a totalitarian. She is a very nasty piece of work. She cares about nothing but power. She doesn't have children of her own, notice, which is a key thing, a key indicator. When a woman doesn't have children of her own, what kind of woman do you think she is? She is a selfish woman. She doesn't care about anything or anyone except herself and her own power. And she has been a Barack Obama ally for quite some time. And Barack Obama is sponsoring her. He's the reason that she became the vice president. And she has surrounded herself, and the Biden administration is surrounded by Obama people, people loyal to Obama. Unlike previous presidents, Obama never left. He never went away. He stayed. He's still in the political game. And Obama is I'm not going to go into Obama. Not right now. But Kamala Harris, she has the soul of a totalitarian. Look at her resume. Look at the things that she has done. She has had no problem with keeping innocent people in jail. She has had no problem with expanding what are crimes so as to get more people into jail to become essentially slave labor. She did that while she was in California. There's a famous nuking of Kamala Harris by Tulsi Gabbard in one of the Democratic debates in the primaries. Tulsi Gabbard annihilated her by saying things that are true. Look it up. Look up what Tulsi Gabbard said, because everything she said was true. Kamala Harris is a nasty, evil woman. She's a political animal, and she is the puppet of Barack Obama. And those people, you know what they intend to do? They intend to suppress civil liberties. They intend to go into more pointless and needless wars in order to ramp up the military-industrial complex. What they aim for is for the United States to become a totalitarian nation. And the guy who's one of the most key people in the whole thing is a guy that you've probably never heard of, a guy called Cass Sunstein. Cass Sunstein. Look that name up. And let me discuss him for just a minute. Cass Sunstein is married to a woman named Samantha Powers, and they are part of Obama's social set and certainly intellectual set. Cass Sunstein wrote a book called Nudge, The Power of Nudge, or some shit like that. I actually have it. And the point of the book is that Cass Sunstein believes, and Obama does, and Kamala Harris does, that the government should nudge people in the direction that the government wants. And the government should be using its powers for the benefit of the people, even if the people don't think it's a good idea. Now, that notion is completely undemocratic. It's basically saying the government knows better than you. And we will nudge you in the direction that we want you to go. And of course, if you don't go in the direction we want, we'll just nudge you a little harder. We'll nudge you a little harder, and finally, if we have to take a rifle butt and just smash you in the back to get you to go where we want you to go, we will do so. That's the basic ideology of these people. They have written books about it. Nudge by Cass Sunstein. Look it up, you know? These people want the government to force citizens to do as they think is best for them, not as they think is best for themselves. No. You might think that what you are doing, the life that you are living, the way you live your life, is the best way for you and makes you happy. But these people, Cass Sunstein with the intellectual framework, Barack Obama with the political connections, and Kamala Harris as the president, they think that they know better for you, and they are going to push you in the direction that they want, whether you like it or not, because after all, it's for your benefit, so you're going to do it. And they can do it. They have the power to do it. They are going to do it. Yeah. They are going to nudge you, quote unquote, nudge you in the direction that they want. Force you in the direction that they want. And there isn't anything that you can do about it. Because, see, if a citizen, or even a group of citizens, even hundreds of thousands of citizens, are up against the U.S. government, the U.S. government is going to win every time. Because it's just simply more powerful, bigger. I mean, any lawyer will tell you that if you are ever faced with the government as your opponent in court, you're going to lose. It's inevitable. Because they're bigger. They have more resources. The best you can do is try to quickly iron out some deal with them, because if you fight them, you lose. And more to the point, if you fight them, they get pissed off, they get vindictive, and they really want to fuck you over if you put up any kind of resistance. Because that's what they're going to be doing, by the way. They are going to really be fucking over anybody who even hints at resistance to them. And that's a fact. If you try to resist in any way, forget about violently. I mean, you even make a gesture towards a weapon, they're going to machine gun your fucking ass on the spot. No question. But even non-violent protests and organizing and whatnot, they're going to nip that shit in the bud. They're going to crush you. You are not going to be able to resist. And since the tech companies, which are basically communications companies, are going to be monitoring, controlling what people say to one another, and making sure that a message does not spread wide if it's not the right message, well, then it'll be impossible for any kind of resistance to emerge now, will it? Especially when these tech companies agree with the Obama-Harris cabal that's going to be taking over. You see? And so I'm here to tell you, and probably I'm the only guy who's going to tell you this. Irrespective of your education, your background, irrespective of how rich or poor you might happen to be, if you value your freedom and to live as you please, now is the time to leave the United States. Now. And you can start preparing yourself, figuring that you're going to leave, not right this second, but, maybe in a few months just to see how it plays out, but you'll see. It's going to get really, really bad. And forget about the economy. The economy is poised for a crash. Everybody who's got money knows this. A crash is on the way, okay? It's in the post, as they say. And that economic crash is just going to give more license for these people to impose more tyrannical measures. And, you don't believe me. I understand. I mean, what I'm saying now seems panicked. Don't believe me. Wait. Watch. See what happens over the next few months.